I've generated around $100 million for myself as a salesperson and for businesses that I've sold for and managed. And this is the feedback structure that I have used for hundreds of team members, specifically in the sales realm, to make sure that we are making the necessary adjustments, we're correcting bad behaviors, and everyone on the team is reaching their highest potential in terms of their performance, their mindset, and everything in between. So let's get into it. Alrighty, so today we're going to be going through the CORES framework. This is essentially the framework that I use in order to structure feedback for team members. So if you are a team lead on your sales team, or if you are a sales manager, if you're a director, if you are just managing people in general, this is great, even outside of sales. So let's dive in. CORES is spelled C-O-R-E-S. It's an acronym, okay? It's an acronym that stands for context, observation, result, expectation, and support. So we're going to dive into each of these, but essentially the guiding principles behind all of this is just making sure that this team member, they've probably done something wrong or not as well as they could have done. And ultimately the responsibility falls back on you as their leader in order to help them make sure they do well. And whether they do well or not is kind of like a reflection on you. So you want to help them ensure that they do well. So here's how we can kind of structure the conversation around this feedback in order to support them, make sure that they do better next time. All right, so the first letter, C, context. Basically, there's a couple of things that go into this, but essentially what you want to do is describe the specific situation. You want to talk about like when and where the behavior occurred, and really make sure that you explain why this conversation is happening right now. So you need to give context around the situation, not just kind of call out the behavior right at first, right? So the context, let's just give an example here. Maybe a feedback is an SDR isn't doing as many dials as they need to do each day. They're not getting the sets that they need to make. They're just not hitting their numbers, right? So the specific situation is like, hey, listen, I was looking over our numbers for the past 7, 14 days, whatever you want to say, when and where the behavior occurred. And I noticed that just like over that time period, that you were just falling a little bit short in terms of the number of dials that you were doing and the outputs that were coming from those. And ultimately, I just wanted to make sure, this is explaining why this is happening now. I just wanted to make sure that like you weren't losing out on money that you could be making in the role. Because I know that ultimately like you want to succeed as much as you can here. I know that you have goals of X and Y and Z, personalized goals based off of your conversations you had with them earlier, etc., etc., etc. Okay, so that's context. Very simple. You don't have to overdo it. It doesn't have to be too complicated, but it's definitely needed. If you leave this out, then it's going to sound like you're just kind of coming out of nowhere with things, and sometimes people will take that the wrong way and feel like, there was no warning, right? So the next letter is O, observation. The 3 key points that kind of fall under this is make sure that you are presenting to this person very specific and very factual observations. These are not guesses. These are based off of data, right? So the second point with this is avoid generalizations and avoid assumptions. And number 3 is use concrete examples, okay? So again, with this example, notice that their numbers are kind of falling down. We pinpointed the reason. It was because they just haven't been putting in as many dials lately. And so you want to make sure that you show them like you're observing something. It's not just a feeling that you're basing all of this off of, right? So specific factual observations. Over the past 14 days, your dials decreased from your usual number by 40%, right? Now there is some discussion here as to like, you don't want to assume anything, right? You want to avoid these assumptions. So I personally like to ask questions here and say like, is everything okay? I just wanted to check in on you and like see if everything's okay. And they'll probably have like some sort of excuse or something because they know that they need to do better. And so you kind of go through a little bit of fact finding here with them to see what happened on their end, because there's always 2 sides to the coin, right? It may have been that their mom just died And so they had to like go to the funeral and like take care of stuff. And so then, yeah, of course they have 40% less dials because they've taken care of more important things. And if you just go through and like you go through this whole process without asking those questions and without finding that out, then you are kind of shooting yourself in the foot as a leader, because you're going to lose a lot of rapport with that person. So you need to make sure that you're asking questions here. You're getting to the root cause of finding out what's going on their side, as well as, of course, using your concrete examples from your side. Okay. Now, let's say that they didn't have, that situation with their mom. Like, it's just that maybe over the past couple of days, they're feeling a little bit unmotivated. They're not seeing the results, etc., etc. So now this is perfect because now we're moving into the letter R, right? Result. So we've done context, we've done observation. Now we're on to the result. So this is where you essentially explain the impact of the behavior in a way that matters to them personally, number one. Number two, you explain the impact of the behavior as it connects to the organization or the team or the unit that they're a part of, right? The SDR team, the sales team as a whole, et cetera, bringing it to light in terms of team goals and what matters to the team, right? Lastly, number three, whenever you are in business, ultimately, like the goal is to serve people, right? And so you can take this a few different directions with number three. You might even add number four, but I think of number three as how it affects others outside of our unit, right? Whether it be the business owner, right? Still kind of within the unit, but not within our subunit of the sales team. So business owner, it might be, if you're in a publicly traded company, maybe stakeholders. If you are, maybe you want to relate it to your customers, right? The fewer dials you do, the fewer people that you're actually going to be able to help change their lives. Like you can take it even as far as that. So ultimately, it's just finding the impact of the behavior in terms of them personally, their unit, their team, and then people outside of their unit or team. So again, just going back to this example with the SDR, the impact of the behavior, if you're doing 40% less dials, have you done the math on what sort of impact that's going to make in terms of your personal income? No? Well, let's do it now, right? So last month you made 10K. This month, if you do 40% less dials, what would that earn you? 6K. Okay. Does that fall in line with the goal that you set yourself for this year and, for this month? No, it does not. Okay. What sort of impact is that going to have on the goal that you set about, insert, again, this is where you need to be personal with your team. You need to know their goals. You need to know what they're driving towards. Does that fall in within the goal of being able to save up the 50K so that you can propose to your girlfriend and actually go and get married? Right? I know you said that you were waiting on that before you wanted to get married. You wanted to be financially secure, right? I know you said that you wanted to be able to save up for the down payment on that house. I know that you said you wanted to save up before having the kid. Like all these sorts of things, you need to know the goals of your team and relate that behavior and the impact of it to them in that way. The second thing then is connecting it to the team, right? So if you're doing 40% less dials, that is typically, usually, let's say if they're making 10K, they're probably bringing in 200K of revenue in a month. So if they do 40% less than that, and that's going to be 120K of revenue into the business. And so then that's 80K short. In addition, as a setter, you're also impacting the closer directly. So if you're doing less dials, not only will you not hit your goal, but the closers will not hit their goals as well. Like, Johnny really wants to achieve X and Y and Z. Bob really wants to achieve A and B and C. I don't know why I said Johnny and Bob. They just came to mind. Johnny and Bob. So relate it to the rest of the team and kind of put a little bit of that social pressure on it. Don't go too hard on this point because the goal should really be like for them to be better for themselves, right? Become a better version of themselves, become a better operator, live up to their highest potential. That's the biggest key there, okay? So make sure that you really cover that. Once you go to other people, you don't have to do as much, right? Describing effects on everyone else, relating it to the business owner. Like, again, the SDR probably isn't going to care too much about it unless you have a really stellar business owner that's like constantly with the team and working with them and on the ground day to day. So going for the customers can also be a big difference. Like, listen, what's the craziest story that you've heard from one of our client wins. They're gonna be like, oh, this person completely turned their life around with what we did. Okay, so like, do you think that could ever happen again? Well, yeah, probably. Okay, so what if there was somebody like that in those 40% less dials that you did, right? Like usually you do 100, 150 dials in a day and you're doing 60 to 80. What about those other 40 people? Like, what if there was one person in there that needed you to call them, that needed you to reach out in order for them to make a change, but you didn't, right? So now you're starting to go into like impact on other people, and that should wrap up the results thing, right? You can kind of tie in some things here for results of them continuing to do this, of whether they stay on the team or not. Personally, I don't really like that. I like to kind of leave that unsaid and make it obvious just with my demeanor of things and like the standard of the team. I don't have to say if you fall below this and if you keep doing this, that you're not going to be on the team anymore. I don't have to say it because that's just the standard on the team, and they just know that because I've already had that conversation with them when I hired them. Okay, now that's results. Moving on to E, that's expectation. So the 3 points here are: make sure that you have clearly stated a desired behavior that you want them to exude, right? Number 2 is then giving specific suggestions for how they can improve this. And then number 3 is defining success through metrics, right? So stating a clearly desired behavior, same example. So, you just been doing 60 to 80 dials a day instead of the minimum, 100. And like you're just falling below what you were doing. You were going above and beyond the minimum before. So ultimately, the desired behavior is going to fall in line with more of like, I know that you can do better and I know that you can make 10K a month. Now, what is needed in order to do that? Let's reverse engineer the inputs in order to get the outputs that you want. So the outputs that you want are to drive 200K in revenue, right? That will make you 10K. Let's say, desired behavior in order to get 200K in revenue is doing a certain number of showed sets. Okay, with the current show rate, how many sets do you then need to make in order to get that many shows? Okay, that's how many sets you need to make with your current numbers. How many dials do you need to make in order to get that many sets? This many dials, okay. And on average, how long is the dial time, right? 1 minute and 40 seconds. Okay, got it. So if you need to do that many dials, that amount of time, that means that you need to be like on the phone actually dialing for this amount of time. Okay, let's pull up your schedule. Let's just schedule out that time right here, right now. Okay, when can you fit those things in, right? When are the most efficient times to be dialing in accordance with the rest of the team, et cetera, et cetera. So you're basically giving their desired behavior. Specific suggestions for improvement, you're kind of doing the same thing there. And then define success metrics. This one can kind of be interesting. What I would do is go above the behavior just a little bit to add a bit of cushion. And then the success metric is that as a threshold, but then them also reporting that to you and checking in with things. And that kind of goes into the final letter of the CORE's framework, which is support. Okay. The 3 points here are really important. I think above everything else that has happened, like if you leave this out, you're missing a massive part of the process. Okay, so support, the 3 points are: communicate your belief in their potential to do better and become more. Okay, I'll say that again. Communicate your belief in this person's potential to do better and to become more. Point number 2 is ensure that you give them everything they need and more to succeed. And point number 3 is check in often to support, ensure progress, and try to mitigate mistakes or lapses within this progress, okay? So communicating your belief in them and in their potential to do better sounds something like, dude, I know that you can do this. I know that you're like a 10K a month minimum rep, right? Like, you're smart, you're strong, you're resilient. Like, you've proven that time and time again in your life. And I know that there's the potential inside you to go well beyond that. So now ensuring you give them everything that they need and more to succeed sounds something like, okay, so knowing that, what do you need from me? What can I do for you? How can I support you in doing all of this, right? And they're probably going to say something like, well, check in on me. Maybe you could help me with this. I'm not really sure about how to do this part of the call. Can you help me with that? So then schedule out time to go over those things with them right then and there. And then the last thing is check in often to support. Go ahead and set up 2 goals from this call, okay? I always like to operate in 2 future goals rather than just 1, because 1, you get there and if you didn't hit it, sometimes there's some excuses or some different things that happen. So 2 goals. We're gonna say, okay, so do this. I'm gonna check in with you on this, just on Slack or give you a call or whatever in 3 days, okay? For the next 3 days only. Don't even focus on day 4 and onward. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. For the next 3 days only, can you commit to doing what we've gone over here? Yes. Okay, great. Now after those 3 days, ideally I would like us to also improve X and Y and Z just a little bit more, right? Take what we're working on here and take it even next level to this next threshold. And we're gonna set that date for maybe 7 days from now, so a week from today. Okay, so I'm gonna check it in 3 days, see how things are going, and then we'll make some adjustments to get you even further so that you can, get even past that 10K a month for the rest of this month. Okay, that's it. And then check in every day. Even if you say that you're gonna check in on day 3, just check in, say, how are things going, right? How are things going since our chat? What progress are we making? How much did you do today? How did things go today? How do you feel? Those sorts of things are really, really important, just to show that you're there, right? That you're supporting, that you are making sure that you're being the leader that this person needs in order to succeed. So just to go over again, the CORES framework, CORES, stands for context, observation, result, expectation, and support. So that's how to structure feedback for your teams. If you want to learn more about this, I have a weekly newsletter that goes out with actionable items for sales reps and for team leaders on how to make more sales. Sometimes there's some more management stuff in there, but really it's geared towards salespeople and sales leaders being able to make more sales individually and with their team. So if you'd like that, check out the link down below, and I will see you on the inside.